Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the True Life Podcast. Hope your day is going amazing. Hope the birds are singing. Hope the sun is shining. I hope the wind is at your back. Got a brand new series for you today. Have you ever heard of the book called Flatland? You're about to. Written way back in the 1800s. You're going to love it. Let's jump into this. Are you ready? There is a dimension you can't see. Not because you're not smart enough. Not because you're not paying attention. But because you haven't been initiated. Yet. By death. Not your own death. Not literally. But close enough. Close enough to see through the game everyone's playing. Close enough to realize that all the things Flatland tells you matter don't. My son died at birth. I lost a career after 26 years. My wife almost died of cancer. I know what it's like to be in my 50s. These were my initiations. The moments when death, actual death, identity death, the confrontation with mortality, lifted me out of the flat plane of normal life and showed me dimensions I couldn't have possibly perceived before. And now I'm back in Flatland, where people are still obsessing over job titles and credentials and retirement plans and being realistic. And I can't relate anymore because I've seen the vertical dimension. This is Flatland, and this is about what happens when death teaches you to see. Let me tell you about a book, Flatland, a romance of many dimensions. It was written in 1884 by Edwin Abbott. It's about a two-dimensional world. Imagine a piece of paper, if you will, a perfectly flat surface. That's where everyone lives. You can move forward and you can move backward. You can move left and you can move right. But there is no up and there is no down. Those dimensions, they don't exist. The inhabitants are shapes. Triangles are the workers, the soldiers, the lowest class. Squares are the professionals, the middle class. Pentagons, hexagons, octagons. The higher you go, the more sides you have, the more status. Circles are the priests, the elite. So many sides, they appear perfectly smooth. Your worth is determined by your geometry. Let that sink in for a minute. Doesn't that kind of sound familiar? In our world, it's not sides. It's your degree. How many letters you have at the end of your name? You got a BA, you got an MA, you got a PhD. How about your title? Assistant, manager, director, VP, CEO? Any of those C-suites behind you over there? How about your salary? The number in your bank account equals your value as a human. How about your follower count? The algorithm's measurement of your significance. The more you accumulate, the more you are. That is Flatland thinking, ladies and gentlemen. You're a shape on a plane trying to get more sides. But here's what the Flatlanders can't perceive. There's a third dimension. Up, down, depth. A whole direction of reality they've never experienced. And if you try to explain it to them, there's a dimension perpendicular to this plane. It's called height. They'd look at you like you were insane. What do you mean up? There's only forward and backward, left and right. That's all there is. You're talking nonsense. The book is actually narrated by a square. A respectable middle-class shape, living his normal life, following the rules, accepting that the 2D plane is all there is. Until one day, he's visited by a sphere, a being from the third dimension. The sphere tries to explain, listen, there's up, there's depth, Your whole world is just a cross-section of something larger. The square thinks he's hallucinating. So the sphere does something radical. He lifts a square out of the plane, pulls him up into the third dimension, and a square sees his entire world from above. He can see inside houses, see the insides of his neighbors, see the truth of Flatland that was completely invisible from within the plane. He sees that everything he thought was solid was just a slice. Then the sphere drops him back, and nothing is ever the same. Here's what I've learned. Death is the sphere. Death is the thing from another dimension that enters your flat world and changes everything. When my son died, that was the sphere appearing. When I lost my career after 26 years, that was being lifted out of the plane. When my wife got cancer, that was seeing from the vertical dimension. When I turned 50 and I realized I don't fit in the traditional workforce anymore, that was being dropped back into Flatland. Changed. These weren't tragedies that happened to me. These were initiations. Moments when death, actual death, identity death, confrontation with mortality, lifted me out of the 2D game and showed me what's real beyond the plane. And here's what you see from up there, from the vertical dimension. All the things Flatland says matter. They don't. Job titles, meaningless when you're standing at the grave of someone you love. Credentials, irrelevant when you lose a career and your identity evaporates. Retirement plans, absurd when someone you love is fighting for their life. Being realistic, that's a prison when you've seen that this reality is just one thin slice of what's possible. Death shows you what's actually real. Love, connection, presence, meaning. Not what you have, what you are. Not your status on the plane, your depth beyond it. That's the third dimension. The vertical axis, the up and down that shatters the flat game of accumulation and status. Maybe you've been initiated too. Maybe through the death of someone you've loved, a diagnosis, yours or someone close to you, a near-death experience, the death of your career, your marriage, your identity, a moment when you looked into the abyss and it looked back, a moment when death got close enough that all the 2D bullshit fell away and you saw clearly, maybe just for a moment, what actually matters. If that's happened to you, you've been lifted out of Flatland. You've seen the third dimension, and you can't unsee it. But here's the problem. The sphere drops you back. You don't get to stay in the vertical dimension. You have to return to Flatland, where people are still networking to climb the ladder, optimizing their LinkedIn profiles, saving for retirement like they're guaranteed to make it there, obsessing over credentials and titles and realistic goals, playing the 2D game like it's all there is. And you're standing there, initiated by death, thinking, don't you see? None of this matters. None of this is real. You're shapes on a plane, accumulating sides, thinking that's what life is. But there's up, there's depth, there's a dimension where all of this looks like theater. But you can't say that because they haven't been lifted out. They haven't been initiated. They're still in Flatland. And from Flatland, you sound crazy. After a square is lifted out and dropped back, he tries to tell people, his family, his friends, the authorities, I've seen the third dimension. There's up, there's depth. Our whole reality is just a cross section. And they say, you're insane. You're dangerous. You're spreading ideas that will destroy society. They imprison them. I haven't been in prison, but I've learned to kind of edit myself. Learn that when you talk about seeing dimensions others can't perceive, it makes people really uncomfortable. They say you're being morbid. You're overthinking it. You need to move on. Be realistic. Translation: stop talking about the other dimensions. Get back on the plane, play the game. But I can't. Because once you've been initiated by death, you can't go back to pretending Flatland is all there is. You can function in it, pay your bills, navigate the systems, but you can't believe in it anymore. So here's what I'm going to do in this series. I'm going to activate your reticular activating system, your RAS, the part of your brain that filters reality, that decides what you notice and what you ignore. Right now, your RAS is tuned to Flatland. You notice job opportunities, promotions, status markets. You track your net worth, your followers, your credentials. You measure your life in 2D metrics. After this series, your RAS will be tuned to the vertical dimension. You'll start seeing Flatland everywhere. In conversations where people brag about titles, in systems designed to keep you on the plane, in your own thoughts when you catch yourself playing the 2D game, in the moments when death whispers, "This is real." And you'll start seeing the third dimension too, moments when the veil lifts. People who've been initiated, you'll recognize them now. Opportunities for dimensional shift that you were blind to before. You'll see them. The vertical axis hiding in plain sight. I'm not going to convince you of anything. I'm not going to prove the third dimension exists. I'm going to tune your perception. And once it's tuned, you can't untune it. At the end of Flatland is Squares in prison. He's been there for years, called insane, isolated, dismissed, but he's still writing, still bearing witness, still insisting the third dimension is real. I've seen it. I'm not in prison, but I am between dimensions. One foot in Flatland, bills, cancer treatments, daily survival. One foot in the vertical, death, knowledge, dimension, sight, initiation. And I'm done pretending I only live on the plane. This series is for the people who've been initiated by death, by loss, by the shattering of everything they thought was solid. People who can't go back to believing Flatland is all there is. Over the next 6 episodes, we're going to explore what it feels like when the sphere appears, when death enters your life, what you see when you're lifted out, the view from the vertical dimension, what it's like being dropped back, functioning in 2D with 3D knowledge, why they call you crazy, consensus reality's fear of dimensional knowing, how to live between dimensions, the work of the initiated. This isn't philosophy. This is field work. Reports from people who've been lifted out and dropped back, starting with Flatland, the book, the map, the warning. Thanks for hanging out with me today.